Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into a really fascinating section of Sir James George Fraser's huge work, Folklore in the Old Testament.
That's right. It's quite an undertaking, his project.
Absolutely, and we're focusing specifically today on Part 3, Chapter 18. Fraser calls it Jonah and the Whale.
A very evocative title for a story many people think they know well.
Exactly. And our goal here is to really unpack Fraser's comparison between, the biblical Jonah narrative and another less familiar traditional story he brings in.
And it's that comparison where Fraser really shines, I think, finding these echoes across cultures.
It really is. Prepare for some pretty surprising connections that he draws out.
It's always interesting to see how Fraser takes these, foundational biblical stories and looks at them through this comparative folklore lens.
Definitely shifts your perspective.
Yeah.
Even on something like Jonah, which, you might dismiss as just a kid's story.
Mm-hmm. But Fraser elevates it, showing these deeper structures.
So let's start with the familiar then. Jonah. Most of us heard this story growing up. How does Fraser set the scene? What's his angle on Jonah's initial actions?
Well, Fraser really emphasizes Jonah's deliberate flight from the Lord. He's trying to get away from a divine command.
Right.
So he heads to Joppa, finds a ship going to Tarshish about as far away as he could imagine, probably, and pays the fare. He seems to genuinely believe he can, sail away from God's presence.
Which, theologically speaking, is a pretty fundamental misunderstanding.
A massive one, yeah. Fraser sort of highlights that miscalculation, and the response is immediate.
The storm.
Exactly. The Lord sends this great wind, Fraser quotes, and the sea gets incredibly violent. The ship is close to breaking apart.
Terrifying stuff.
Absolutely. But the really striking detail Fraser picks up on is Jonah's reaction, or lack thereof. While everyone else is panicking, praying, trying to save the ship, Jonah's asleep.
Down below, just sleeping through this chaos.
Deep sleep, yeah. Down in the sides of the ship. The shipmaster actually has to go find him, wake him up, and basically yell at him, "What are you doing asleep? Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he'll save us."
Wow. That detail speaks volumes, doesn't it? His detachment, maybe denial.
It really does paint a picture of his state of mind. So things get worse, and the sailors decide, this storm isn't natural. Someone on board must be responsible.
The idea of a collective punishment, needing a scapegoat almost.
Precisely. So they decide to cast lots to figure out who the culprit is. And, no surprise.
It falls on Jonah.
It falls on Jonah.
And his reaction then? Does he fight it?
No, not at all. Fraser points out that Jonah immediately owns up. He tells them who he is, that he worships the God who made the sea and land, and that, yes, he's fleeing from him. He actually tells them, "Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will be calm for you."
He asks them to do it.
Urgently, yeah. But what's interesting is the crew's reaction. They don't just chuck him overboard immediately. Fraser notes they actually try really hard to row back to land first.
So they showed some humanity, compassion.
Definitely. They really try to avoid it. But the storm's too strong. So eventually, reluctantly, they do as Jonah asks. They throw him into the sea.
And the result?
Instant calm. The moment he hits the water, the raging stops.
Wow. That's immediate cause and effect.
Yeah.
Very clear divine sign.
Undeniable. And then, of course, comes the next part. The Lord doesn't let Jonah drown. He shows mercy. He'd prepared a great fish.
Whale or whatever creature it was.
Exactly. A great fish swallows Jonah. And he's inside for 3 days and 3 nights.
3 days. Inside a fish.
And it's from inside the fish, Fraser reminds us, referencing the biblical text directly, Jonah chapter 2, that Jonah prays his prayer of repentance.
Right. His moment of reckoning.
Mm-hmm. And after that prayer, the Lord speaks to the fish, just commands it. And the fish vomits Jonah out onto dry land, safe and sound.
An incredible story. Judgment, desperation, repentance, mercy. It's all there.
It absolutely is a powerful narrative in its own right.
But this is where Fraser pivots, right? He brings in this parallel story, the one he calls, less artistic, but equally voracious.
That's the phrase he uses, yeah, which is quite the statement. He's putting this other story on a similar footing in terms of maybe its truth value for the people who tell it.
Interesting. Okay, so tell us about this parallel. Where does it come from?
It comes from the indigenous people of Windesi, which Fraser locates on the northern coast of what was then Dutch New Guinea. It's a story about the people who live on Jop Island, though originally they lived somewhere else, Baitware.
Okay, so a different cultural context entirely.
Completely different. And the setup is much more mundane. No fleeing prophets here.
Yeah.
It's about 5 men. They're just rowing their canoe across to another place, Warapin, to get sago, basic food gathering,
Yeah.
an everyday trip.
Okay, pretty normal activity.
Until a whale appears. And it swallows them, canoe and all.
The whole canoe
Yeah.
inside the whale.
Canoe and all, yes.
Yeah.
That's the detail. And the whale sinks down to the bottom of the sea with them inside.
Okay, that's quite a situation. Very different from Jonah just being swallowed. So what do they do inside? Do they pray?
No prayer mentioned. Their response is incredibly practical, almost brutally pragmatic.
How so?
Well, they're inside this whale's belly. So what do? They start cutting bits off the whale, slices of its liver, its guts.
While they're inside.
While they're inside. Then they take their canoe, which is in there with them, and they hack it into pieces
Wait, what?
that make firewood. They light a fire inside the whale's belly using the canoe pieces.
You're kidding. A fire inside a whale.
That's the story Fraze recounts. And they use the fire to roast the slices of liver and guts they cut off, and they eat them.
They cooked and ate the whale from the inside out. That's astounding. Resourceful, I guess, but wow.
It's definitely resourceful, a stark contrast to Jonah's experience, isn't it? He's praying, they're having a barbecue.
A very grim barbecue. So what happens to the whale? I can't imagine a fire inside is good for it.
Unsurprisingly, no. The story says the whale dies from all this internal activity and mutilation. Its dead body then drifts towards the shore.
Okay, so they're inside a dead whale, drifting. How do they get out?
While they're still inside drifting, they hear a sound, the cry of a hornbill.
The bird.
A specific bird, yes, the hornbill. They hear it, and one asks, is that land? So they manage to pry open the whale's snout, look out, and sure enough, they see land. So they climb out.
The hornbill's cry was their signal.
Their signal of hope, yeah. But the hornbill's role isn't over. According to the story Fraser cites, the bird actually comes up to the men on the beach.
It talks to them.
It essentially claims responsibility. It says something like, I do it. It's my doing that you people are still alive.
Wow. The bird saved them.
That's what the bird claims. And then it gives them instructions. Go home, get your people, and come live on this island.
And they do.
They do. They follow the hornbill's advice, fetch their community, and settle on Jop Island. And Fraser notes this is the origin story for their settlement there. And there's a direct cultural consequence, too. Because the hornbills saved their ancestors, the people of Jop Island traditionally do not eat hornbills. It's a taboo rooted right in this foundational event.
That makes perfect sense. It connects the myth directly to a living practice.
Exactly. And Fraser, he provides his source, a Dutch account by J.A. van Dalen. He even adds a little footnote, Fraser does, about the local name for the hornbill, jarvogel or yearbird, tied to the growth on its beak. Small details that ground the story.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have these two incredibly vivid stories, Jonah and the Windesi men. Side by side, what are the big common threads Fraser wants us to see?
Well, the most obvious one, and it's pretty striking, is being swallowed whole by a huge sea creature, a great fish, a whale.
Right, that's the core image.
Then there's the survival inside the creature for a period, which is, inherently miraculous or at least extraordinary in both cases.
Definitely not an everyday occurrence.
And finally, both stories end with an escape. Getting back to dry land, safe and sound, against all odds.
So, swallowed, survived inside, escaped. Those are the key plot points they share.
Those seem to be the core structural similarities Fraser is highlighting, this motif, you could call it, appearing in vastly different cultural contexts.
But as we've already touched on, the differences are maybe even more revealing, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. The differences tell you so much about the worldview and the purpose of each story.
Okay, let's unpack those. What's the first major divergence?
I'd say the motivation for being swallowed is critical. For Jonah, it's entirely about divine judgment. He disobeyed God, he fled, and this is the direct consequence orchestrated by God.
A punishment, essentially, or at least a corrective measure.
Exactly. Whereas for the Windesi men, it seems purely accidental. They were just going about their business, getting sago. The whale encounter wasn't a punishment for anything they did. It was more like a hazard of the sea, maybe.
Divine will versus perhaps just a natural, albeit terrifying event. That's a huge difference in framing.
It is, and it leads to the next big difference, the internal experience. What happens inside the fish?
Yeah, we touched on this. Jonah prays.
Right. His experience is spiritual, internal. It's about repentance, his relationship with God. It's transformative on a soul level.
And the Windesi men.
Purely practical survival. Cutting, hacking, building a fire, cooking, eating. It's about human ingenuity and physical action against their confinement.
Active manipulation of the situation versus passive spiritual reflection.
Precisely. One is about submitting to divine power, the other about asserting human resourcefulness against natural forces.
Okay, that's stark.
Um,
What else? How they get out must be different too.
Very different. The mechanism of deliverance. For Jonah, it's simple. God tells the fish what to do, vomit him out. Direct divine command.
God is fully in control of the exit.
Completely. For the Windesi men, their escape is a direct result of their own actions killing the fish from the inside. And then they're guided out by the hornbill, a creature of nature which even claims agency.
So, human action leading to the creature's death, plus guidance from another natural element, the bird. No direct divine command mentioned there.
None at all. It's a much more, shall we say, imminent rescue, rooted in their actions and the natural world around them, including the helpful bird.
Okay, so motivation, internal experience, mechanism of deliverance, all profoundly different. So what? What does Fraser suggest this all means?
Well, it points to the different functions these stories serve. The Jonah story is fundamentally theological. It teaches lessons about obedience, God's reach, repentance, divine mercy. It operates within a framework of monotheistic belief and morality.
It's didactic, teaching religious truths.
Exactly. The Windesi story, however, functions very differently. It's primarily an origin myth. It explains how these people came to live on Jop Island.
Right, the hornbill told them to settle there.
And it also establishes a key cultural taboo why they don't eat hornbills. It explains a part of their social structure and relationship with their specific environment. It's ideological, explaining the cause or origin of something.
So one is about universal religious themes, the other about specific local history and cultural practice.
That seems to be the core distinction in their purpose, yes. They use a similar narrative frame, being swallowed and returning, but they fill it with entirely different cultural meaning and significance.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how universal human experiences like facing overwhelming danger, feeling trapped, surviving against the odds get interpreted and told in such different ways.
Absolutely. What does it say about how different cultures perceive agency? Is it divine power, human ingenuity, or forces within nature itself that holds the key to survival and deliverance?
And how those stories then shape the values and beliefs of the community.
Precisely. Fraser's comparison forces you to look beyond the surface plot and ask about the deeper cultural work these narratives are doing. They're not just adventure stories, they're encoding worldviews.
So we've gone from Jonah's flight and repentance inside the great fish to the incredible, almost practical survival tale of the Windesi men inside the whale, guided by a hornbill, all through Fraser's comparative lens from folklore in the Old Testament.
It really does demonstrate the power of his method, doesn't it? Taking these seemingly disparate tales and revealing both common human threads and profound cultural specificities.
It certainly enriches how you read both stories, the familiar and the less known. You see them in a new light.
Definitely. And maybe it leaves us, and you listening, with a thought to ponder. These stories are both about surviving the impossible, about returning from the belly of the beast, literally.
A powerful archetype.
A very powerful one. But think about that difference in how deliverance comes about. Divine command versus essentially killing your captor from within and getting directions from a bird. What might that contrast tell us about how different societies understand humanity's power, its limitations, and its relationship to the sacred or the natural world?
That's a great question to chew on. How much agency do we have? Where does salvation come from? The answers seem to vary quite dramatically between these two tales.
They really do. It just shows how folklore can capture the deepest questions and offer culturally specific answers.